Hey everybody, it's me again, Adam Chapnick with the Security Token Academy. We are here in Los Angeles at the 2018 Crypto Invest Summit, and I'm joined right now by a very special guest. It's Mark Vange, the CEO and founder of Tokenize. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure, nice to have you.
So for everybody who hasn't yet had the pleasure of hearing about Tokenize, why don't you just give us sort of the high level, what is it? What's Tokenize?
Sure, Tokenize is a platform for the tokenization of securities. We believe that tokenization needs to be done in a fully compliant and legal way, and we enable issuers to do that while kind of maximizing access for investors, but still complying with the regulations of the US or whatever jurisdiction they happen to be in.
Got it. Okay, so you guys have chosen to operate on a chain that isn't sort of what everybody tends to go with. You're not on Ethereum. What are you guys using?
Right. So we use the Stellar distributed ledger. So Ethereum is great, virtual machines great, that full capability is wonderful, but also presents a lot more complexity, a lot more cost, and much lower transaction rates. And I know that there's lots of smart people working on expanding and reducing and making more effective all those things, but the reality is most securities transactions do not require the virtual machine. Now we do have a capability to bridge across to Ethereum if an issuer does need to manage, let's say, their shares with smart contracts, but for the predominance of the issuers that we work with, it's just not an issue. So for example, our first deal that we announced just the other day is a tokenization of a $10 million deal. It's a company called Oxygen Hospitality. They build very cool hotels. They wanted to do a deal in crypto. It's basically a note, right? They pay interest. None of that requires a virtual machine. It's all just standard kind of financial operations.
Right, interesting. And so do you guys have a focus on what kind of tokenization you are doing, or is that either by choice or by just de facto who's showing up? Are you doing lending? Is that a thing?
So we do the tokenization of any security.
Anything.
So lending could be, it could be a pile of gold.
Right.
It could be, shares in a company, whatever it is, right? Our kind of key qualification is the company needs to want to be compliant, right?
Right.
So whatever exemption you're filing under, whether you're doing a Reg D or a Reg A, or going to a full-on Reg S1 or whatever it is, the paperwork needs to be filed, and then the issue needs to reflect the restrictions of that type of filing. So for instance, if you can only accept money from exempted investors, we have a process that allows you to qualify tokens, and our technology makes it possible for you to be assured that your tokens will never go into a wallet that has not been pre-qualified.
So is that not it's not a smart contract functionality?
It's not a smart contract functionality.
And how does it work?
So, I mean, Stellar has its own kind of programming. It's not the same as Ethereum programming. It's not as capable. It's not, NP complete. But it allows us all the capabilities that we need to achieve our goals and in terms of the kind of limits that we place on. So, for example, for me, a very important capability of securities is token recoverability, right?
Yes.
In the crypto universe, you lose your password, you lose your tokens.
Right.
Okay. In the real world, if I invest in your company, you give me a share certificate, take it home, the dog eats it.
Yes.
I'm still an investor in your company,
correct.
right? If I get hit by a bus, my wife's now an investor in your company.
Right.
And the issuers ultimately are the ones that are responsible for this and are liable for this.
Yes.
So our platform gives them mechanisms to control that. Our platform gives them mechanisms to create options and do things like vesting and swaps and other kind of market making mechanics.
How cool. So I don't want to say it is a smart contract because it isn't, but it is intelligent control.
Absolutely.
Perhaps, if
absolutely.
I'm writing the marketing.
That's exactly right. And essentially, again, in our universe, because the law says so, the issuer is ultimately in control of the shares. A lot of people, especially people who have kind of been drinking the ICO Kool-Aid, say, well, how can you trust the issuer? Right. And my simple question to them is, if you don't trust the issuer, what are you doing investing in them?
Why are you investing in them? That's a very good question. Very simple. Cool. Okay, so what, in terms of, we're called the Security Token Academy, so we love anybody who plays in and requires that everyone play in the compliant ecosystem. What do you see from your vantage point, which is a unique one, as sort of the early maybe early adopters, for lack of a better word, in terms of verticals? Is there a kind of issuer that seems to be more gravitating towards this?
Absolutely. So actually I'm seeing a lot of activity from real estate. In fact, I told you our first deal was real estate, but actually a lot of activity in real estate. And I actually welcome this a lot because, when you take the risk of, let's say, an early stage technology company plus the risk of crypto, people just freak out and say, oh my gosh, this is
too much.
Everybody understands real estate. Real estate is just a very safe kind of fundamental asset, and so it's easier to think about tokenizing it because you know that the asset's always going to be there.
There's only
so you
one
can just,
risky part.
exactly. You just think about that, and so it's not that that's necessarily a focus of ours. Obviously, we work with a bunch of people in different industries, but that definitely seems to be kind of an emerging trend. That a lot of the early adopters of this stuff are tokenizing real estate assets.
Yeah, and we've seen that across the industry. We saw, the Aspen St. Regis, and we've seen like all kinds of. There was a property in the East Village in New York that just tokenized. So that makes total sense, and the way you said that it's not double risk, that explains it. What do you think is the next one coming around the bend after real estate? Or if there is one, maybe it doesn't show yet.
I actually think the next one is probably the tokenization of funds and the tokenization of meta investments, right?
Yeah.
You still have a professional investment manager in the mix, and it's a way for them to reach out to a broader audience.
Yeah.
Especially under U.S. law, this whole notion of having to have fully qualified investors really limits the universe of investors because the overhead of kind of going through the qualification process is quite high, right? People need to fill out forms, prove their income, and so on. So we spend a lot of time working on the workflow involved in that. Not that we've changed the fundamental requirements, but we have really optimized the workflow and have made it possible for people to essentially accept smaller checks, right? Less overhead means you can open the investment up to more people, right? There's a lot of qualified investors out there, millions and millions of them in the U.S., who have over $1 million in assets, make over $250,000 a year, but who are never going to write a $200,000 check or $150,000 check. So if that's your minimum, you're not talking to any of those guys.
That's right.
Whereas if you could take a $10,000 check from that sort of an investor, it makes sense, but for that your overhead has to be reduced. On the funding side, we're working with a lot of IRAs to actually, through them, give their customers exposure to these kind of deals. So we're expanding essentially the investor pool for our issuers. And we're also working with the second largest custodian in the U.S. To allow people to invest directly from their managed IRAs into these deals.
Wow. Okay, so that's a component that I hadn't grasped entirely. Is that you not only give them sort of the technological and sort of functional process underpinnings to do the issuance, but you actually provide some access to the investor side.
So we are a software as a service platform. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a BD, I'm not any of those things.
Right.
But yeah, we definitely, in our platform, we have built in roles for all of these different players because they're all an important part of this ecosystem.
Of course, yeah.
And ultimately, issuers aren't there because tokens are cool. Issuers are there because they want to raise money.
Right, exactly. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so gazing into your crystal ball, how long do you think it will be before sort of the de facto way to raise money will be through a token offering instead of the other way, and it'll just seem quaint that we ever did it another way? Are we 18 months, 3 years, 5 years, 1 month?
I think we're quite far away, actually, because a lot of investors, by charter, cannot invest in tokens.
Right.
And so that's a real limitation.
At the fund level.
Exactly, So in fact, what we did, for instance, with our own offering, because of course, we want to eat our own dog food, right?
Yes.
We actually created a binary structure, what we call. So we have one class of shares, which is paper, one class of shares, which is token. They're completely equivalent.
Oh, okay.
And you have the option of moving between them.
Huh.
But what it means is that if you're a more traditional if you're a more traditional investor, or because you're precluded from investing in tokens, you can just buy the paper with the option of transitioning to tokens when you can.
Got it.
Conversely, if you want to be one of the cool kids, you can buy tokens, but still have the security blanket of being able to transition back to paper if this whole token thing falls apart.
That's very clever. I haven't heard anyone. I don't think I've heard anyone who's doing that.
Well, you heard it here first.
We heard it here first.
I invented this, and we've been working with the state of Delaware through our attorneys to kind of make it happen, and we're there now.
I love it. Fantastic. Okay, so what do you think you see as some of the frictions that exist that are preventing more people from just jumping right in to use a platform like yours or any other mechanism to go security token?
The biggest issue we've had has been the disambiguation between crypto, ICOs, and STOs.
Yes.
So we spend a lot of time educating people. And, honestly, my number one response when I talk to issuers today is they look at, my demo and they see the platform and say, that is super cool. I can see how that saves me piles of money. I'm not sure about this whole crypto thing. Can I just use your platform to raise, conventional PPMs?
Funny. Interesting.
Yeah. People are definitely still nervous about it.
So it's the psychology is still
for sure.
not there. Interesting.
For sure.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us all about what you're doing and your thoughts and your prognostications. And please come back and tell us how it's going.
Pleasure to meet you.
All right,
Thank
too.
you.
All right.